2024 regular city council meeting. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, not yet present. Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jordan, not present. Councilmember Stenton.
Here.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez.
Present.
Mayor Rouse.
Here.
And Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Present.
Very good. We'll move on to ceremonial items. You have something to read?
Yes, item 1, National Law Enforcement Records and Support Services Week.
National Law Enforcement Records and Support Services Week, November 11th through 15th, 2024. Whereas law enforcement agencies throughout the state of California depend on individuals on non-sworn classifications to provide vital services, crucial to helping law enforcement agencies identify, pursue, apprehend, and process suspected lawbreakers. And whereas these professionals use their expertise and experience to provide support to police officers in the field, assist in various areas of police operations, and improve service strategies. And whereas records and support services professionals fulfill daily responsibilities, including processing crime and accident reports, subpoenas, issuing traffic and parking citations, and reporting statistical crime information to the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And whereas records and support services fulfill the duties of alcohol licensing, permit processing, register sex, arson, and gang offenders, and are responsible for the release of information to the public. Now, therefore, I, Randy Rouse, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Santa Barbara, do hereby proclaim November 11th through November 15th, 2024, to be National Law Enforcement Records and Support Services Week in Santa Barbara. Congratulations, Chief. Peterson, there you go.
I will make this quick, and I won't ask Paulette or Lori to speak because they literally might put something in my water later if I did that. But I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Lori. She's our administrative manager who actually oversees almost all of our support staff. She is in charge of not just records, but our business office, and the list is actually very long. And then I'd like to introduce you to Paulette, who is our records manager. And then I'm going to have all of our record specialists and support staff that's here just stand so that you can recognize them. None of this happens without them, so we would really not be able to do our jobs without all of our professional staff. So thank you very much. And like I said, just want to take a moment to recognize them. Thank you.
And the next item is item 2, Employee Recognition Service Award Pins.
Before we do that, Ms. Gutierrez, do you have a comment?
I just want to thank everybody that came here that supports the PD in that level of administration records. Especially in the front desk, you are definitely the first encounter to people that want to report something. And there's a lot of people that still are very intimidated to walk into the PD. And I'm very proud to say that I've had really great experiences, and the bilingual staff, thank you so much. So from the bottom of my heart, just wanted to say thank you so much for your service.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, did you already read you already read it. And this is Ms. McAdoo.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I'm pleased to continue the kudos and congratulations for our city employees that are receiving recognition for service awards to the City of Santa Barbara this month. I'm going to read them all, and I believe we have one employee who is here today celebrating 25 years of service, so we'll get a chance to recognize him. First, we'll honor those celebrating 5 years of service. We have Michael Rubin, our Building and Safety Supervisor in Community Development. Ryan Cullum, our Senior Airport Operations Specialist in the Airport Department. And we'll stop there and maybe give them a round of applause for 5 years. And then next we have 10 years of service, Stephen Cornejo, a Street Maintenance Worker 2 in Public Works. And we'll give him a round of applause. And then 20 years of service, Christy Lanning, who's a Senior Human Resource Analyst in HR, and we're incredibly grateful for her 20 years of service. And last, but certainly not least, we have Samuel Blackwell, who is a building inspector in community development, and I believe he is here. And Mayor, if you want to come down. Yes, you actually have to come up, and we're going to give you a little recognition publicly. Sorry.
All right.
All
By
righty.
the way, I hope you guys had a good day at Veterans Day celebration yesterday. I saw
We
you.
did indeed. That was nice, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. I'm going to give you this little pin to begin with, and we have a little proclamation for you. For Samuel Blackwell, Building Inspector for 25 years of service, October 2024. Samuel Blackwell began his career with the City of Santa Barbara on October 11, 1999, in the Building and Safety Division of Community Development. On October 20th, 2003, Sam was promoted to the position of Code Enforcement Officer. In 2014, he became a building inspector. Sam enjoyed his time as a code enforcement officer. His strong work ethic, coupled with his knowledge and caring nature, brought successful and positive results. On every case, his goal was to work with the customers to find solutions. This approach was well received and appreciated by those he worked with and led to Sam having one of the highest success rates in completing cases. Sam then transferred to his current position as building inspector, where he enjoys guiding and supporting his teammates through their work. His commitment to this approach and his principles are deeply appreciated by his community development colleagues and the city as a whole. His ever-present positive attitude uplifts those around him and often leaves them with a smile. Year after year, Sam is the recipient of praise and compliments from customers and residents alike. Sam is a veteran employee whose leadership, commitment, and expertise continue to be valued by colleagues and customers. Now, in addition to his other contributions, he happily offers historical knowledge that is instrumental in maintaining consistency and solving complex problems for the Community Development Department. For this, his supervisor, manager, and director are especially grateful. Sam is a proud, longtime Santa Barbara resident. When not working, he enjoys the beach and waves and being with family and friends. Samuel Blackwell, on behalf of the City Council, the residents of Santa Barbara, and your fellow employees, it is a great pleasure to honor you for your exemplary career and outstanding service to our community. Well done.
I just have a couple words to say. Yes, it's been 25 years altogether. It's been nice serving the city of Santa Barbara, helping to keep Santa Barbara beautiful. It's been quite a job at times. The first 15 years was both code enforcement and building inspector, which was wearing two hats at the same time. I was protecting lives, keeping the peace with neighbors, and promoting mental health through fires, floods, and COVID-19. My wildest case included the FBI involvement of confiscating someone's gun collection after I was threatened to be killed. The last thing here, second to the last thing, when will I retire? That's to the man upstairs. We mentioned his name when we said the Pledge of Allegiance. And years ago, I got given this by my teammates. And on the back, it says, "This Purple Heart is for the injuries you may have received by being fair, firm, and friendly." Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sam. All right, very good. Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
I have one of note. We would like to request that the council continue item number 7 on the agenda, which is the contracts for construction of the Laguna Stormwater Pump Station and Tide Gate Renewal Project. We'd like to continue that to November 19th. We received a letter late last night. Staff did not receive it until this morning, and so we believe everything's in order, but we'd like an opportunity to just review that letter, make sure we've addressed all the concerns that were raised, and so we'd like to bring that back on November 19th, please.
And Ms. Harmon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to start a brief conversation in connection with today's final administrative item on the recommendations and findings from the ad hoc housing crisis group. First, Councilmember Jordan is not here. I have to leave this meeting early in just an hour and 45 minutes or so to begin travel to go to this month's Coastal Commission hearing, which means we will be 2 council members down on an item that has significant importance, significant community engagement, and I think warrants the full council's participation. So recognizing that there are a number of folks here who I assume would like to speak, and potentially they, if there's an interest in continuing this, maybe can speak at general public comment, but I'd like to ask my colleagues whether they would consider continuing this item to allow for the full council to participate, potentially. I don't know if we need to set a date in the continuance, or if we can just continue it and it can be scheduled at a later time. Madam Attorney.
Madam Attorney, would you address that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I would suggest first off is taking an action, making a motion, taking an action to move this item up on the agenda. And then, once it's moved to, up on the agenda to perhaps the first administrative item after consent, then having this discussion about whether or not the council would like to continue it. You don't need to continue it to a date certain because it's not a notice public hearing. You can just continue it to a later date, not a date certain, but to the new year or whenever council would like to bring it back. And have that discussion. You could open the public hearing on it, take the public comment now for those that are here, those that are online, if you wanted to do that, or not, just continue the entire matter, up to you. But I think the first course of action is to move it off the item 18 and move it to, the first administrative item so that, appropriately place it earlier in the agenda. So you can do that right after consent is what I would suggest.
And then once we get to the actual item, that's when we discuss potentially continuing it?
Yes,
Okay,
right,
thank you.
exactly.
So
in
if
that
I
case-
may ask then, if we do in fact decide to table it, can the folks that showed up for comment then just address it on general public comment since it won't be an agendized item?
No, what I'm suggesting is you're moving the actual item 18.
Right, and I get that.
Up, and then if you want to open it for public comment, open the agenda item for public comment and take those public comment items that are on the agenda item today, you can do that. And then you can, instead of taking council comments and questions and so forth, you can then continue the item. Or you can just continue the entire matter and take public comment at that later date.
Right, my only
Up to you.
fear would be that people that expect it to be maybe a little later on in the day, since it's positioned on the original agenda, may not be here yet.
Well, you can take the public comment now and then. You
All
don't
right.
have to close. It's not a quasi judicial matter, right? So you don't need to close the public hearing. You can
And-
take comment now, you can take comment then.
Okay, very good.
That's
And
what
then,
I suggest.
okay, so let's start out procedurally by doing that. We'll entertain a motion.
Sorry, yes, just one brief additional question. In this framework, Madam City Attorney, we won't be hearing the staff report. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Then I would request that we move item 18 think is the number, up to the first administrative item on today's agenda. That would move it up to 16.
Right, so it'll go right before the legislative update.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Friedman. May we have the vote, please? Does everybody understand the motion? Mr. Gutierrez, you had a question to the motion?
I do have a question to the motion. So I've studied the staff report and I have concerns about what they're reporting. And I would appreciate at least hearing the staff report and getting recommendations to that before we move it to a later date for a vote. Is that possible?
So my recommendation would be then that you vote against whatever the recommendation is. So if Councilmember Harmon takes an action to continue the entire thing, including the staff report, to a later date, then you might consider voting against that action and then make a motion to hear the staff report today, continue the discussion of it to a later date.
And I would also say, Councilmember Gutierrez, if the council does vote to continue it, staff is happy to sit down with you between now and when it's continued to try to address those concerns, and we can make some changes to the report as well if there are concerns you have.
Right. Go ahead.
Mayor, I'd like to hear my colleagues who were on the ad hoc committee with me's opinion before we take the vote.
Okay.
So the only vote that's before the council right now, just to be clear, is just to move it to an
Yeah, that's
earlier
only,
spot
yeah,
on
it's
the
not
agenda.
substantial, but it's only for the motion itself, to the motion. So,
Correct, to the
correct.
motion.
Ms. Snedden, to the motion.
Yes.
I think this is to the motion, but if not, tell me. Would we be able to move it to a date that is before the first of the year in transparency and respect for all the ad hoc committee members?
Councilmember Snedden, I think you could move it to whatever date is suggested.
I would just be concerned with, let's look at what else is on the agenda. We have some other large agenda items coming up on the next several meetings, so we need to look at that.
Okay. Ms. Gutierrez?
This motion is to move it up and to have open discussion, right?
Yeah, the motion,
That is
the motion on the
correct.
table
Okay.
right now is merely to move it up on the agenda item
Okay.
list.
It's to move it up on the agenda to discuss
Yeah.
whether or not to actually hear the item today.
A
Right.
second.
Okay, so that's the motion. May we have
Yes, and I believe this is a motion by Councilmember Harmon, seconded by Councilmember Friedman? Okay. To move this, what is currently item 18, to be the first administrative item to be heard today.
that's correct.
All right, we'll go ahead and vote.
Passes unanimously with all present, with Michael Jordan absent. Thank you. And then, Madam Attorney, we are tabling item 7. Do we need to make a motion on that, or does that?
No,
Done
that's just
administratively.
pulled from the
Thank you.
agenda. Thank you.
Okay. All right, very good. Okay, with that, we will move to the consent calendar. You have some items to read.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 3, ordinance for the second amendment to the Hertz Corporation concession agreement at the airport. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only, an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the airport director to execute the second amendment to the concession agreement with the Hertz Corporation located at 500 James Fowler Road, commencing upon the effective date of the enabling ordinance. Item 4, amending Chapter 18.40 and repealing Section 2.12.035 of the municipal code pertaining to airport police and enforcement, ordinance introduction. Recommendation the council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only, an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending Chapter 18.40 and repealing Section 2.12.035 of the municipal code pertaining to airport police and enforcement. Item 5, records destruction for the Community Development Department, resolution. Recommendation that the council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara relating to the destruction of records held by the Community Development Department in the Housing and Human Services and Building and Safety Office Division. Item 6, fiscal year 2024 fourth quarter budget adjustments resolution. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 23076 to approve proposed fourth quarter Q4 adjustments to fiscal year 2024 revenue and expenditure appropriations as detailed in the attached schedule of proposed Q4 adjustments. Item 7, we are not hearing today. Item 8, authorization to amend the legal services agreement with Richards, Watson, and Gershon resolution agreement. Recommendation that council B adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to appropriate funds for the small tunnel air binding project. Item 9, contract for the construction of Upper De La Vina Street and Milpas Street as at US Highway 101 Operational Improvements Project resolution agreement. Recommendation that council C adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to appropriate funds for the Upper De La Vina Street and Milpas Street at Highway 101 Operational Improvements Project. And that's all on consent.
All right, very good. Are there any items on consent that need to be pulled by any member of council? Ms. Gutierrez.
On number 4, I would just want to ask city staff for more information. And on number 6.
Okay, we had 4 and 6, which were both read into the record. So let's see here. Who do we have? Ms. McAdoo, who do we want to have address these items?
For
I
number
believe
6.
Director Hastert is here for item 4, and then item 6, we have Director DeMartini is here.
Okay. Would you please come on up, Director Hastert?
Good afternoon. If you could just explain to the public what this item is and just give a little background to the public, please.
Sure, Councilmember Gutierrez and Mayor and Council, thank you for having me here. We're going through some updates with the Santa Barbara Airport Police, and that is really came out of a few different things. We had an audit of all of what was going on with our airport patrol, and it saw some areas that could use some improvement with record keeping, training, things like that. And so one of the things that we have done most recently is we've applied for and been accepted into Post as an airport agency, and realized that in order to do a lot of these functions that were uncovered in the audit, we could spend a lot of money and bring in a lot of extra people just specifically to the airport, or even better, we could collaborate with the Santa Barbara Police Department and utilize a lot of their existing infrastructure for record keeping and some of those other functions, body cameras, things like that. So this really is the ordinance which allows for those, our two agencies, even though they're both under the city, to work cooperatively together to make all of those changes happen.
Thank you.
And then you had item 6 as well.
Yes, please.
Mr. DeMartini, if you would, please.
Again, for the public's education, could you talk about the budget adjustments for
Yeah.
that fourth quarter, please? Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Gutierrez, I'd be happy to. So these are just some very final budget adjustments that are required for the city to complete the financial statements for the fiscal year that just recently closed, fiscal year 2024. As council knows, we come quarterly to you for some technical budgetary adjustments to reflect the actuals that we're reporting, and these are those final adjustments in working with our auditor to wrap up the financial statements.
Could you briefly just give us kind of an overall of like what were those adjustments?
Yes, Councilmember Gutierrez, I'd be happy to. So they're included in the attachment in the staff report. There are a few basically capital transfer adjustments where we record the revenue coming into a certain account and we move it out so that we can expend those funds in a project fund for our project accounting. There are a couple special revenue fund changes in regards to police supplemental law enforcement fund, very, very minor adjustment. And then we have a minor adjustment in the water capital fund, again, to reflect the actual revenue coming in to where it's actually being spent. Again, they're just very technical adjustments. It has no impact on the overall spending because the year has already concluded.
Thank you. And the reason that I asked, I got a couple emails, especially with now Measure I passing. And so a couple community members were concerned, but thank you for that clarification.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, very good. There's no one present. There's pulled a consent item. Is there anyone online that's pulled something in for consent, Madam Clerk?
No hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. And with that, I will take entertain a motion on the consent calendar, balance of the consent calendar, absent item 7, absent item 4, and absent item 6.
So move.
Do we have to remove 4 and 6?
Well, since we already heard 4 and 6, can we just fold it all in there?
Do we need to vote on this separately, Ms. Gutierrez, since you pulled it? Okay, then we can take the entire consent calendar, absent the tabled item 7.
Okay, that's
Okay.
the motion.
Is that the motion?
Second.
Okay, it's first by Friedman, second by Harmon.
This is a motion by Councilmember Friedman, seconded by Councilmember Harmon for the entirety of the consent calendar except for item 7. Go ahead and vote.
Passed unanimously with all present, absent Michael Jordan. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to general public comment, and this is for items not on the agenda, for anything that was within the purview of this body. You have 3 minutes at the podium. We'll start out with Betsy J. Green. Is Betsy J. Green here? All righty, move on to Monica Renteria.
Hi, I'm Monica. I'm here on behalf of Casa de la Raza. With the holidays around the corner, we welcome everyone to visit our website, www.lacasafounders.org, to check out all the holiday activities that we have lined up, as well as our fundraisers. One of the fundraisers that we have going on is our annual tamal fundraiser. So you can visit our website or give us a call. We have the chicken mole, green pork, veggie, and we even have a vegan option. So if you guys would like to support us in that way, you can visit www.lacasafounders.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Strauss.
Hi, I believe there was an error made under which comment I was under. I was supposed to be listed under agenda comment. I can wait for that to speak.
For which agenda item?
Agenda for the Bath LLC.
Okay. For the
wait
for the one that was 18 that we moved to 16? Okay. All right, thank you. No? Something else? I didn't hear you. Would you come up to the microphone, please?
Okay, I was told there was an error made when we signed up and we were listed under general comment instead of the agenda comment. Is that correct?
For
I'm supposed
which-
to
I'm
be
sorry, which-
speaking under agenda comment.
Which item?
I don't know which item.
Here, hang on one second, Ms. McAdoo.
Oh,
give me a hand.
18, excuse me, 18.
Okay, that's what I mentioned before. 18 is now moved to 16, so
That's what I thought.
that's the one you would like to comment on.
I mean, I still want to comment under 18, but under the agenda. Excuse me, this is my first time doing this.
It's
and
quite
I
all
don't-
right.
This is like a foreign language to me, honestly.
Us too, trust
So-
us. No, that's the big item everybody's talking about, right?
So he'll call you back up.
Yeah, we'll call you back up.
Great, thank you so
Sure,
much.
my pleasure. Now, we've cleared that up. Let's see, do we have anybody online for general public comment?
No hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. With that, we will close general public comment. We'll move on to council member committee assignment reports. Anyone? Ms. Snedden?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Let's see, I had the distinct honor of representing the city of Santa Barbara at our Toba sister cities in Japan for their anniversary, 70th anniversary, and thank you for letting me go and represent. And the hospitality and the welcome and the decades-long relationships with the Toba delegation and families and all of the education exchange programs was really strong, and it was wonderful to see our twin dolphin fountain there, and it's a very strong connection between our cities. So that was a true honor. Also attended at the very tail end the Library Plaza ribbon cutting. Had a CCRB meeting discussing possibly potential litigation, closed session, and then also with Public Works meet and greet with visiting author Sherry Goodman, thank you, for the Threat Multiplier book when she visited.
All right, any other committee assignment reports? Okay, with that, we are going to move to the administrative agenda, and item 18 is now the first one on the agenda. Would you read that into the record, please?
Item 18, presentation on the findings and recommendations from the Housing Crisis Ad Hoc Committee.
Ms. Harmon, you had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I wanted to respond to a couple of points that were raised. I think it makes good sense to allow public comment for those that have taken the time out of their day to come, but it sounds like there are substantive concerns or changes or desires to rework the presentation with staff. I don't think that, given the importance of this item to the community, I don't think it makes sense to have that debate here. I think it makes sense to do what we can beforehand to get the report in shape and bring it back so we can have a truly substantive discussion with the full council. Truthfully, I think to do otherwise would simply be to set us up for a lot more confusion, and this is just too important. It's, to me, that it's just not responsible to approach it that way. So understanding that everyone is very, very interested in having this matter heard, I, too, am really looking forward to this discussion. I just want to make sure that we do it in a way that is responsible and takes into account everyone's time. So with that said, I would love to set a date certain so we could include all members of the committee, but understanding there's some work that has to go in on that front, I would just simply move that we continue this item while opening the public hearing so as to allow those public commenters who would like to comment today to do so. That would be my motion.
And in your idea, Ms. Harmon, that would be to not have a staff presentation, simply have the public comment.
That's correct, because it
then,
seems like there's some work that needs to be done.
And then, given that we'd have a new staff presentation, the public would be allowed to re-comment on the next hearing
Correct.
as well.
Yes.
Is that your intent?
Yeah, I think that's the best sort of both worlds.
Okay, very good. And Ms. Connect, does that meet protocols? Is that
It does, thank you.
okay? So is that a motion by you? Is there a second? Then I have a couple of people that have their names up. Okay, second by Ms. Snedden. Okay, now comment from Ms. Gutierrez to the motion.
I don't feel comfortable voting today unless I have a date set for this item to be continued. And I would like for that date to be before we go on the Christmas break.
I would, if I'm just looking at the upcoming agendas, potentially Tuesday, December 3rd would be the only available date.
If we can agenda item this item to Tuesday, December 3rd, I'll be comfortable voting on.
Okay, and well, Ms. McAdoo is the keeper of the realm there, so.
I think it's up to the council if you want to make that as the continuation date, or do you want to leave it open-ended? We can do either, so.
If that works for you guys, sure. Okay.
Okay, so did you want to include that in the motion? Can that be the second, would the seconder agree? Yes. Okay, and then you have a comment? Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. This is actually a comment to whether or not we change that or not, but part of what is, well, first I want to just commend staff on the tremendous amount of work and the presentation and report, and it's so thorough, and yet incomplete in just one area in that it doesn't include the formal recommendations of the ad hoc committee. And so I think it's so important after that 2 years of work and meeting with people that we weigh in on what the top 3 at least recommendations were. So in that spirit, I wasn't sure if it was going to be able to have a date certain or not, but I thought that we would codify that all members of the ad hoc committee would be able to put forward their the recommendations of the committee, so that if it wasn't date certain, but did we just decide it is date certain?
December 3rd is what we have on the table
December 3rd
right
is
now.
what it is, okay. So then I would just, my only comment would then be that the addition of the formal ad hoc committee recommendations.
All right, very good. Ms. Gutierrez, you have your line?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify to the public, the ad hoc committee met with several different individuals and organizations, and we also had agreed that we would do our last community outreach. And then the ad hoc committee would, gather, and then we would propose to council our recommendations. And that, I think that's why Ms. Sneddon is asking for that time where the committee gives the recommendation, because if we just come and present today, it's going to seem to us that we've invested so much time that we basically just took notes. And there's also a survey, an online survey that community members were able to take, and so I also want to see that data behind that survey as well. So the community meeting was to give the community the last opportunity to voice their concerns and opinions, and then we would create as an ad hoc committee our recommendations to the public. So that's the missing piece of this process.
All right, very good. So we have a motion and a second on the table to do exactly that. And just so the public understands, the idea would be to go ahead and let you make public comment without the staff presentation, knowing that we're going to continue this item, have this presentation done, whatever the changes may be. So, and you'll have the opportunity to comment again if you so choose. All righty? With that, let's go for a vote, if we may, if everybody understands the motion. Madam Clerk?
So this is a motion by Councilmember Harmon, seconded by Councilmember Sneddon, to continue the hearing of this item to December 3rd, 2024, with public comment to be heard today, and at that continued date to have the staff presentation and public comment as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Start the vote.
Motion passes with all present. Michael Jordan Assman, thank you very much. So with that, we're going to go to public comment on the item. We're going to go straight away to that without the staff presentation. Because there are a number of speakers, I'm going to ask that we go to 2 minutes per speaker. Bearing in mind, once again, this is just your public comment for this particular date hearing, and the continuation, you may speak again if you would like to. So, and this will actually help inform staff even more as we go forward into creating staff presentation. I'm going to start out with Dustin Hoyseth from Chamber. Saw Dustin out there earlier. Okay. Amber Asher. All right, and once again, we're at 2 minutes now, so if you would, please.
Thank you all. I'll probably save the longer part of my comment for December 3rd. I do want to come here as a representative of those of us in the city who are voting renters. which stands for a majority of the people. So you'll hear from a lot of folks who have an interest in growing profit through providing housing. And those of us who are renters need stability. We're raising families. We're trying to stay in this community, to work and play here alongside all of you. So we're hoping for stabilization of rents and no subsidies without that. And for us to put a halt on these evictions for profit, it's something that we really need to see changed, whether or not we have a state mandate to do that locally. I think we can take action even without the repeal of Costa-Hawkins. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next speaker is Stephen Sharp. Can't quite make out the last name, but I got the first two right?
Thank you, Councilman Morales. I'll just save my comment for December 3rd.
Okay, thank you. Stanley Zankoff?
Hello, Mayor and City Council. Stanley Zankoff here, wearing my my hat as a member of the Santa Barbara Tenants Union. And I just, I'll be brief. Appreciate really the emphasis on having the full discussion as a full council on such an important item. I just want to echo Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez's comments about, the staff recommendation, as Councilmember Sneddon mentioned, is, there's been so much work done on it, and I so appreciate that. And, I find it a little concerning the way that the items were prioritized. I just want to center this conversation around the fact that this committee was even born out of a groundswell of broadly popular support for things like rent stabilization and a cap on rents upon return post renovations. And that is certainly what we've been hearing at the Tenants Union week in and week out when we meet with folks. I also want to decouple the conversation around Prop 33. I know it's a little wonky and weird, but we were having conversations around rent stabilization long before Prop 33 went on the ballot. It actually affects a totally, they're interrelated, but certainly separate and distinct. And I also just want to give a huge shout out to everybody who's been in the weeds on policy when they have two jobs, when they're trying to make rent. And this process over the last 2 years with the ad hoc committee has been really tiring, to be totally honest, but I think there's been a really unanimous prioritization of things like rent stabilization and not just the anti-price gouging protections that the state of California has had. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Miguel Avila.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Miguel Avila. I'm president of the Greater Santa Barbara Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We have over 200 members. Many of them are small mom and pops, income property owners. The way I make a living is selling real estate. So I'm here to speak in behalf of those small mom and pops property owners. My recommendation to you is that whatever decision you make, please come to a discussion, come to a dialogue. I'm also part of the housing crisis consortium with the city. So let's, I want to be sensitive to tenants. Landlords need tenants. Tenants need landlords. So why can't we all come together on something that can benefit both sides? So please do not go one way and I don't agree that you go the other way, but let's all come to a positive solution that can benefit landlords and can also benefit tenants. And I will save my longer comment for the 3rd of January. Thank you.
So, Mr. Gutierrez, I have a question for Mr.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Avila. So as being the head of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, have you reached out and collected data about your membership and how they feel?
As a matter of fact, yes, and I'm working on it. We had a number of projects that kind of got me a little behind on this study. But being myself in the real estate business and knowing so much about business, 51 years in Santa Barbara, and 51 years involved in the middle of business, community, nonprofits, you name it. So I personally know a lot of this information. Anybody that wants to buy whatever kind of property, for me to work with them before I take them out to see any kind of properties, whether it's income property, whether it's a house, I have to see their income. So I know about pretty much all across what people in general make in Santa Barbara. So, 51 years working with workers, with landlords, with just about people in every different level. So yes, to answer your question, I have started to do that.
So if you could do us a favor and separate the landlords, the realtors, and the business owners and get their opinions, because those are very vastly different, right? Because
Yes.
some business owners do have an opinion about how much rent they're paying to operate their business out of, right? So if you can distinguish that, I'd really appreciate it.
And not only that, but many business owners have employees, and those employees need to live somewhere, and the better that they live, it's better that they live here in the vicinity of Santa Barbara than commute from Lompoc, but I do promote home ownership, and some people who cannot afford to buy here, they said, well, I work for somebody, but I can afford to buy Lompoc, so I take him to buy Lompoc, duplex, triplex, fourplex, single-family home, whatever. So, but that's people's choice to commute if they want to. Of course, the preference is to live here, but as you know, I don't think there's a city in the country that needs more affordable housing than Santa Barbara for so many employees. Those freeways, more going south than going north, get all clogged up. A lot of it has to do because of the construction, but a lot of it has to do because those people work in Santa Barbara and live in other parts of the county or Ventura County, because that's our city. So anyway, thank you.
All right, very good. Monica Renteria? And in the meantime, by the way, in terms of putting in more speaker slips for this item, we're going to cut it off at 3 p.m. along with online, if we can make an announcement. So if your hand is not raised by then, we're going to cut off the comment on this item. Ms. Renteria, please go.
Hi. I'm Monica. I'm here again on behalf of Casa de la Raza. Casa is a safe haven for most isolated of community members. Daily, we get folks that face displacement of spaces to live because of the crisis and short-term need. We have no way of helping them, and we have nowhere to send them to get that help. What we are asking, Casa would like to help in the implementation of the voucher program in any way. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Inda?
Mayor Rouse, council members, my name is Jacqueline Inda. I'm a co-founder of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I'm here as a resident of the East Side, and I'm also here because I wear multiple hats in this community. One of those is district elections. As you know, as an ambassador with district elections, the district of the East Side was actually drafted out to be 52% of majority minority protected class. Unfortunately, in the last few years, particularly in the last 5 years, because there hasn't been any protections for renters, that number has decreased now to close to 42%. The voters of the East Side are renters, and we need to figure out a way to protect that protected class number. As you know, district elections took a big hit all over the entire state, with modifying boundaries to be able to identify protected classes. And the East Side being one of those very important protected classes and one of the seats that we intend to protect for the long haul in our city. We can't do that if we're not protecting renters, because renters are more than 62% of that voting base. And if we do not create some kind of ordinance and modify the ordinances to protect those renters, we will lose that base. And the more time passes, that 42% will continue to drop with the developments that are being proposed in that district. So I encourage you to continue to look at it through that lens, especially for the east side and the west side. Those are two very important districts because they were held by a stipulation. And it's important for us to continue to always advocate for keeping those numbers in those communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Strauss.
Hello, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Veronica Strauss, as you said. And me and one of my 13 neighbors, Summer Howitt, are here today to represent our other 12 neighbors who could not be here today due to either being at school or work right now. We are currently facing an attempted rent eviction. And thank God we're all united. United we stand. And we've been working with the tenants union and also legal aid. And thank God they exist, because if it wasn't for them, we'd be sunk. Our community on Upward Bath Street consists of professionals and children. We consist of an early childhood education teacher, ESL teacher, an engineer, a chef, clinical study manager, communications manager, a hospice nurse, a physical therapist, a hairstylist, a business owner, and a UCSB employee. We love our little complex, which has 8 cottages and a triplex house. Not only do we love our complex, but we love each other. We don't want to be forced out of our homes, and we've been predicting for months that rent eviction would be coming with the sale of the property. The prior owner kept our rents reasonable. Their priority seems to be pushing us out immediately, the new landlord, with a small cash offer to leave by the end of January. It's ridiculous that if we did all leave, then 11 units would be sitting empty for months and months in this city where rental availability is low, while we struggle to find affordable housing before they get their permits lined up, which they don't yet have. I just noticed I'm out of time. I'll further comment on December 3rd, but to just wrap it up, we are facing attempted rent eviction, and we're standing united, and we're asking for your support in this matter.
Thank you. Stacy Kaplan.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Stacy Kaplan. I'm here on behalf of the Santa Barbara Association of Realtors. I'm the Government Relations Chair, and first I really want to say thank you to the Ad Hoc Housing Crisis Committee members for meeting with us and for really listening. And I can see in the graph that was presented that our comments were heard. And in looking over all of the comments, I so appreciate the way it was given a scoring system. So I would say without a formal recommendation or formal recommendations, I can't say that I'm opposed or for, but I just wanted to acknowledge that it seems that the strongest or most heavily weighted items were prioritizing workforce housing and the missing middle, increasing housing supply and streamlining the procedures, creating incentives for housing providers, and leveraging the public-private partnerships. All of that's important. So I was happy to see that that was mentioned by other community organizations as well. With regards to Prop 33 and Costa-Hawkins, this year was not unique. Every year we see an attempt to take that down, and every year it fails. Our issue in California and in Santa Barbara is supply. There's no two ways about that. So as you all are aware, the realtors are not in favor of further rent stabilization measures and the coupling of some other items such as a rental registry. I don't believe that that helps those who need the help the most. It's still a constriction of supply. So I look forward to hearing a full report in December, and I really appreciate waiting to hear from those actual members who took the time to put this together. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Rob Fredericks.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members. Our community is facing an ongoing and severe affordable housing crisis, which requires us to act with urgency and prioritize our efforts, much like a triage approach in an emergency. While some might argue that producing any type of housing is beneficial, I believe our unique market conditions require a more targeted approach. We are in an area where housing costs are inelastic to supply-sided economics due to the high demand of living in paradise. Thus, our focus should be both on long-term and short-term solutions that directly address our community's specific needs. On long-term solutions, our priority should be increasing the supply of deed-restricted affordable housing, specifically to low and moderate income households who are the most impacted by the housing crisis. Higher income households are generally less rent burdened and better equipped to navigate the market conditions. To achieve meaningful change, I urge the council to dedicate more ongoing funding into the local housing trust fund. And with the recent passage of Measure I, we have an excellent opportunity to channel additional funds into the trust, which will allow us to leverage state and federal resources to meet our RHNA goals. Additionally, I'd like to caution against using the term workforce housing, which can be misleading. Most of Santa Barbara's workers are in the lower income brackets and risk being excluded when we narrowly define workforce housing. Furthermore, a recommendation within the city's direct control is to expedite entitlement and permit processing for 100% affordable housing projects. Prioritizing these projects in the queue beyond just an ombudsman position would enable faster approvals and move us closer to alleviating our housing shortage. Am I out of time?
Happens to the best of them, Rob.
You know, it's the timer on my electric toothbrush, 2 minutes, seems a lot longer. Thanks. I'll speak more
Appreciate
in
your
December.
discipline. Thank you. Lloyd Beardsmore.
I just wanted to say, I'm going to reserve comments till next week, but that being said, I appreciate the efforts of the ad hoc committee. I was there for the meeting about a month ago. I thought we were good to go for today, but I'm hearing that a month isn't long enough for staff to get everything together, which is frustrating. I know I'm not the only person who is ready today. We thought our time to comment was going to be later, and I'm sure there's just as many tenants that thought this was going to be later too, that maybe they could, you know. Anyway, it's frustrating that we have to push it down. So I guess it is what it is, and we'll just have to all deal with it. But I would like to all of you look at why Prop 33 went down. It's not the first rent control issue to be on the ballot. It failed not only at the state level, but also in Santa Barbara with our voters. So as you look moving forward, possibly consider putting this on our ballot, because this is going to be pushed by maybe one district in our city, maybe two, and it's going to affect our entire city for years. So just a thought. Thank you.
All right, Nick Gonzalez.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, just like to thank you for all your work. I'm involved in many different groups, and so I had an opportunity to sit in several ad hoc committee meetings. Very constructive. I was very happy to be able to put input from different perspectives. That being said, before you make policy decisions, I'd like to remind everyone, given your current budget crisis, one of the only means by which you have to build more affordable housing is through having it required with inclusionary housing. And so as much as we want to demonize the developers, without them, you have no more affordable housing. So you have to craft policy as well thought and well considered. Because right now, if your only affordable housing has come online from either paying in lieu fees from the developers or the inclusionary element of the developers, you will have no additional housing, and you will see this housing crisis even exacerbate even more than what you're at today. That being said, I did notice, or my understanding is rents from the housing authority were excluded in some of the data analysis. I think that's a fundamental flaw. The reason I feel that is that there's thousands of those vouchers, whether it's through the county or the city, that are in the private market. And there are federal regulations in multiple unit properties that limit what you can charge the open market when you have a voucher, because you can't charge you can't charge more in the open market than you do the voucher. And so that's a compelling argument for those numbers to be included and be brought into those numbers. And I think getting an example helps out, because although you have projects that are exclusively 100% in that segment, other vouchers are across the entire market. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy Santa Maria?
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council members. I come today as an East Side resident and a tenant in the city. And I want to make sure that, during these ongoing discussions, we keep in mind why this Housing Crisis Task Force was formed. It was to help the most vulnerable in our city, which is tenants and which is the majority of the city. Our responsibility as both citizens and elected officials is to listen to the needs of the majority and the needs of the most vulnerable. And I want to make sure that we are implementing measures to protect the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and that we make fiscally responsible decisions. I want to caution against voucher programs, especially in the absence of any sort of local rent stabilization ordinance, because that is a very surefire way of making sure that all of our funds go down the drain. I speak as somebody who worked during the pandemic in partnership with United Way of Santa Barbara to help distribute rental assistance funds for folks who were on the brink of eviction. And I will tell you right now, that money was never enough. It wasn't able to help as many people as we wanted it to, and that money went quick. There are much more sensible and reasonable uses of our funds and resources to implement long-term and short-term solutions. Long-term, I want to echo what Mr. Rob Fredericks mentioned about making sure we prioritize the projects that are deed-restricted affordable housing. But short-term, we also need to make sure that we stem the flow of displacement and we stem the flow of evictions, particularly those that are done for unreasonable or unjust reasons. I want to make sure that we keep in mind that the majority of the folks in the city, being renters, have been proposing a rent stabilization and rental registry and other measures for quite a while now, and I think we're on a good path to getting that off the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Dustin Hoyseth. I put you on ice earlier, so.
Sorry, I ran back here. I was watching you guys online. Hello, Mayor Rouse and council members. My name is Dustin Hoyseth. I'm the Public Policy Manager for the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce, which represents businesses from Goleta to Carpinteria. We're extremely grateful to the Housing Ad Hoc Committee for all their hard work gathering community feedback on this important topic. I have a lot to say about today's recommendation, and there are plenty of other speakers, so I'll just keep this simple. The Chamber strongly supports the following recommendations: prioritizing more workforce housing for the missing middle, number 9, creative incentive programs for housing providers, and number 14, streamlining the permitting process and building processes with dedicated timeframes and assigned staff to shepherd housing projects through. The Chamber has been advocating for these 3 items for some time, and we're glad to see them before you. The Chamber is particularly excited about recommendation number 11, leveraging public-private partnerships. We are continuing our efforts regarding the creation of an employer-sponsored housing consortium program that will allow employers of all sizes and in industries to pool their financial resources and support their local employees with housing. We continue to work with local developers and employers, and we view all of our local government jurisdictions as important partners in this process as well, particularly the City of Santa Barbara. We look forward to partnering with the city to discuss how our program can partner with and synergize the city's programmatic efforts in this area. Okay, now on to the fun part, but I got 35 seconds. The Chamber strongly opposes, the Chamber opposes the following recommendations before you today. Number 4, implementing a rent stabilization ordinance. Number 5, creating a rental registry. And number 3, working to ensure that UCSB and SBCC are providing sufficient housing. The Chamber strongly opposes rent control. We support making this community affordable for all members of our community and local workforce. However, rent control is not the right way to accomplish this goal. There is significant evidence to showcase the ineffectiveness of rent control policies, and our regional housing crisis is first and foremost a supply and demand issue. Rent control interferes with the natural supply and demand of the housing market. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, you have a question for the speaker?
Yes. So same question I asked the head of the Hispanic Chamber. Have you polled your members, separating realtors and landlords and just focusing on the business owners about their opinion about some sort of rent stabilization?
I wouldn't say that we've done like an official poll or survey of our entire membership, but we've had significant discussions of this ongoing back since before I even had a role with the chamber. We have several committees of people who are much more involved in discussions regarding local policy and local policy issues. We have industry dedicated committees that span various committees, and so during those discussions, I mean, it's frequently come up that the chamber's policy position is to be anti-rent control policy, and that just comes from several different working groups and committees, but I can't say that we've done like a hard poll to our entire membership on this, to this date at least.
Could you?
Yeah, it's something we could explore for sure.
I would appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to come back with that and more discussion.
All right, very good. We have speakers online for this item, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to read the first few names. We'll have Donna Marie Perez, then Elizabeth Adams, then Michelle Carbone. Donna Marie Perez, please go ahead.
And it's 2 minutes, please.
Donna Marie Perez, you can unmute yourself and go ahead. Donna Marie Perez, you can unmute yourself and go ahead. Okay, we will come back. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Adams. Elizabeth Adams, please go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Elizabeth Adams. I'm the Regional Director at CAF Santa Barbara. And first, just want to say thank you so much for prioritizing affordable housing as an issue from the perspective of homelessness. The lack of affordable housing not only creates homelessness, but also extends homelessness. So it's key for us and just so instrumental in ending homelessness in our community. And as I think all of us know, homelessness is very expensive, and I think something that we'd all like to not see in our community. And as our point-in-time count showed this past year, the increasing population of people experiencing homelessness now is for families in our community who just don't have the wages to keep up with the costs of housing and living. And once somebody becomes homeless, getting out of it is very, very challenging. And right now, once we get somebody to a point where they're ready to go back into the community and move out of our interim housing site, for example, they're not able to, and people are experiencing homelessness for longer because there isn't housing for them to get into. So if we have more affordable housing that people can stay in, key. If we have more affordable housing that people can get into to get out of homelessness, also awesome. And so really looking forward to what comes from this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Michelle Carbone. Michelle Carbone, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon. Landlords' costs continue to skyrocket. In order for mom and pop landlords, many of whom are senior citizens, in order for us to continue to provide rental housing, landlords must be able to raise rents to market rates upon a vacancy by the tenants. I will look forward to speaking again in December. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Linda Hantz, then Linda Honickman, then Maria Navarro. Linda Hantz, please go ahead.
Hello. I come to you as a daughter of Santa Barbara. I was raised here, born here, raised here. My mother worked for 30 years at San Marcos High School. And I am a mom and pop landlord. I share the previous speaker's concerns. I left this community because I could not foresee being able to earn enough money to afford rents or to buy a home. I came back. I left when I was 24. I came back in my 50s during the Great Recession and bought a rental, which I now rent out. I do not believe I will be able to manage the repairs that will be necessary to keep my rental in good shape for my renters if many of the housing stabilization measures that I've heard about are going to be put in place. And I would withdraw my rental from the marketplace because I seem to have less and less control over what is meant to be an asset for my income and for my old age. I am 67. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Linda Honickman. Linda Honickman, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse and council members. I'm Linda Honickman and will share highlights from the letter by the League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara. Our letter was written before the discovery of incorrect terminology used for recommendation number 1 in today's staff report. We attended the community workshop and met independently with the committee. Both times we underscored that given our limited resources, the city's focus for increasing housing supply should be on those with the greatest housing need and cost burden. We therefore support the original wording of the workshop for recommendation 1, which was to prioritize more workforce housing for the missing middle for low to moderate income households. The League suggests a two-track solution strategy. For the long term, we need to increase supply of deed-restricted housing at the low and moderate income levels, below 120% AMI, that can serve as a permanently affordable safety net for our workforce and vulnerable households. In order to do that, we need a permanent funding source for the local housing trust fund. That's recommendation 2. Since housing takes a long time to build in the short term, we need to protect tenants from immediate displacement with stronger tenant protections and enforcement. We agree with the importance of rent stabilization, number 4, legal representation access, number 8, and the rental registry, number 5, can provide transparency to all and aid in enforcement. Recommendation number 6, to sustain a short-term rental enforcement program, will also be helped by a registry. Finally, we believe that local preference policies should be developed. They were left out of the choices provided on October 14th, but have strong broad-based support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Maria Navarro. Maria Navarro, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Navarro. I am a
policy advocate for cause, and I am here to speak on the Housing Crisis Committee. As Wendy Santamaria was mentioning earlier, in April 2022, it was created to study rent stabilization as a way to address the housing crisis. And I think with these recommendations, it is important to ground ourselves into, yes, the idea of this Housing Crisis Committee was to be supposed to be a most cost-effective, community-driven approach to understand the impact of rent control on housing policies. And after 2 years, we're now presented a list of 20 policy ideas, with rent stabilization, which was the main reason for creating the committee, treated as just one option among many. Again, we just want to highlight that this issue deserves priority. We also want to say that every time the council delays any decision, real people are hurt, families are displaced, workers leave, students are disrupted, and our elderly struggle to find shelter. This crisis isn't an abstract market force, but a result of landlords raising rents and profiting off what used to be affordable housing. Again, I want to remind people also that housing is not meant to only be an asset for a few people. It's meant to be a place where people feel safe, lay their head after a long day of work, and are able to be in community and be with people around them as well. So I feel like council should stand with the community over those who seek profits at our expense, and protecting tenants means directing staff to focus on policies that strengthen tenant protections, including rent stabilization, a rent registry, and a tighter eviction protection. So thank you for listening, and again, I urge you to take meaningful action. If not today, then December 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Jessica Wishon-Laarb. Jessica Wishon-Laarb, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Jessica Wishon-Laarb. I really want to thank the Housing Crisis Ad Hoc Committee. I represent Habitat for Humanity of Southern Santa Barbara County as CEO, and the process you went through genuinely took time, thoughtfulness, and truly an open mind. This one-time the one-on-one time you spent with agencies and individuals, coupled with the group session, it's instrumental to understand the genuine and various needs. We're glad to see many of the recommendations, especially housing preservation, which is one of Habitat's programs, and we're pleased to have been a part of the city's pilot program to help ensure repairs can be made to preserve the existing stock of naturally affordable housing. What Habitat's housing model offers is very specific and really rare. It's the creation of new homeownership opportunities that are deed restricted and affordable for those who are between 60 and 80% of the AMI. This housing resource specifically can address the barriers so much of us have connected around. That includes rental prices, outpacing wages, a fear of eviction, and housing stability, and more. There are several references to workforce housing needs, and Habitat serves the people in the workforce, and that includes those who are low income. And by job title, that ranges from nurses, teachers, bus drivers, small business owners, faith leaders, nonprofit executives, and more. We'll be back on December 3rd, and thank you so much for your time and partnership.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is James Carbone, and then the final speaker will be Dora Maria Perez. James Carbone, please go ahead.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Very good. So I'll, as with most folks, reserve my comments so you don't have to hear things twice. But I do want to point out a couple quick things. One, I just want to underscore what Rob Fredericks had to say. As a small landlord, mom and pop type, completely agree with the focus and summary of what he believes needs to be done to create more affordable housing, truly affordable housing, indeed restricted, and a lot of other great things. So kudos to Rob for what he said. I would like to point out, though, that I recommend the following, actually two things. One is I would really suggest you think about going with where we have agreement. There's everybody agrees we need more affordable housing. Everybody agrees we need to build more. There's some great ways to do it. I think that is where our focus should be, rather than going with this divisive rent control issue that just keeps, we hear the two sides go back and forth on every one of these meetings, and I'm sure you're sick of it too. But it's not the way, and I can go into more details at the next meeting. But what the last thing I did want to point out quickly, though, was kudos to the ad hoc committee. Appreciate everything they've done, and I'm sure a lot of work went into this behind the scenes that I never saw. I did participate. The one thing I would have to give you as a critique, and I've asked for this many times, or suggested it, I should say, is the one thing that hasn't been done is to get the two sides together in a room and let them talk. I really believe if you get small property owners and CAUSE and the tenants union and sit them in a room, I think we would find a lot more consensus, because each side would better understand each other. And before starting to make some rather important decisions for our entire community, I really would think that would be a very smart thing to do. I don't know how you can resolve conflict without allowing the people to have a dialogue, not just sound bites like we're doing today. Thank you.
Thank you. Final speaker, please.
Our final speaker is Dora Maria Perez. Dora Maria Perez, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Randy and City Council members. My name is Dora Maria Perez, and I'm part of a CAUSE organization who advocate for affordable housing. So my comment is, I would like to comment that the majority of community members are in favor of a rent stabilization and rental registry and policies to make housing more affordable. Therefore, I believe that the Council should respect these decisions and ask staff to act accordingly. Thank you, and have an excellent day.
Thank you. Okay, very good. With that, we're going to close that item and table it and continue it on December 3rd. Ms. McAdoo, is that correct? So I appreciate Ms. Harmon saw it and maybe giving staff even time to flesh this out just a little bit more completely. And thank you all for your patience with us today, but I think that was good. It's not to the item, is it?
It's just a comment for staff.
Okay, comment for staff. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. I just want to really emphasize that if there was any misperception that this was a shortcoming on staff's part, it absolutely was not. Staff has worked above and beyond to collate all this data. We handed them raw notes, and they made a whole community forum out of it. I really want to credit Alejandro Gutierrez for the really comprehensive idea of having a community forum with all sides present. It's very difficult to collate all that information, and it was really excellently done. And I'll take responsibility for the incomplete portion, is that we did not codify our final results. So thank you for that latitude, and it's really an attendance issue is why we're delaying it to give it its full hearing. I really just want to emphasize that this is not at all a staffing issue. It's been tremendous work.
Thank you. Ms. Gutierrez.
Just also piggyback on Ms. Nedden's comment and answering on one of the public comments. The whole purpose of that community meeting was to bring the community together, to bring both sides and to have dialogue, and that was accomplished. So again, thank you for the community for participating and for city staff putting it on. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty then, we'll get to hear plenty about this in the very near future. With that, we're going to move to the next item. Would you read that into the record, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that is
Thank you all.
item 16, legislative update to City Council.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Barbara Anderson, Senior Assistant to the City Administrator, and I'm joined today by Eric O'Donnell, Director, and Carly Shelby, Senior Associate of Townsend Public Affairs. So in 2023, the City Administrator's Office retained Townsend as our first ever lobbyist to represent the city's interests and legislative priorities in Sacramento. The contract was renewed for this fiscal year, given the positive feedback we received from our elected officials, Mayor Rouse, council, as well as city staff about how their expertise has really elevated the city of Santa Barbara on statewide issues. Last year, Townsend also went above and beyond and represented us pro bono on the federal level to assist the city in securing financial resources to support a key capital improvement project. You'll hear more about that later, but I do want to thank Townsend for really stepping in to support us, understanding our challenges, and helping us to secure much-needed resources. So I'll turn it over now to Carly and Eric for our legislative update.
Very good. Ms. Shelby?
Yes. A good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, and thank you so much, Barbara, for that introduction. Carly Shelby with Townsend Public Affairs, joined by Eric O'Donnell, our director, here to provide a recap of our work throughout the course of the 2024 legislative session as your state advocates. Last time we saw you all was about this time last year during that strategic planning retreat where we discussed priorities. We gave you an overview of what to come for this legislative session. And so we're excited to kind of revisit that and hear some of your thoughts as well. So getting into today's presentation, we are going to keep it brief, very high level. This is not necessarily comprehensive of all the work that we've done throughout the year, but just some snapshots of work. So we're going to get into a 2024 legislative recap, anticipated issues for 2025, some funding updates, including the one that Barbara spoke about earlier, and then our advocacy program. So as a recap, as far as the outcomes for this session, this year featured over 2,000 new bill vehicles, which is pretty typical for this legislature. The governor ultimately signed 1,017 of those measures and vetoed 189, comprising an 18% veto rate. This veto rate was slightly higher than in previous years, and this is largely due to the budget deficit that we experienced. When we are in a budget deficit year and bills propose unbudgeted implementation costs, they are far more likely to be vetoed. So getting into some of our key areas of policy engagement, this year, your priority is really aligned with the legislature's in terms of public safety reform. So retail organized theft occurrences really reached a crisis point. So the legislature worked to advance a package of bills aimed at increasing penalties, streamlining enforcement, and closing loopholes. This included Senate Bill 905 by Senator Wiener, which closes the loophole associated with the prosecution of vehicle theft. Previously, or current law until January 1st of 2025, victims of these crimes had to prove that they had locked their vehicle in order to establish a crime. So you had to have some kind of picture or receipt proving that your car door was locked. This eliminates that. And we know that there are a lot of smash and grab theft crimes throughout the state. AB 1779 by Assemblymember Irwin allows for the consolidation of theft charges across multiple counties. We know that in a lot of these theft rings, they will operate in multiple places at once. This will streamline the prosecutorial process and could result in additional grand felony theft charges, which carry additional jail time. And then AB 2943 by Assembly Speaker Rivas and Assembly members of Burr. This was really the centerpiece of the legislature's public safety package. And it makes a number of statutory reforms that are similar to the goals of Prop 36, which voters just approved by overwhelming margins. This measure aggregates theft crimes for the purposes of charging convicted individuals with felony theft. It increases penalties for fentanyl and other drug offenses, and it expands law enforcement arrest capabilities. We supported all of these measures as a city, and all of these were signed into law and will go into effect January 1st of 2025. Moving on to housing and land use. This is a consistent focus of the legislature, so this year was no different. Key bills included Assembly Bill 1886 and Assembly Bill 1893, which have to do with clarifying the timing, authority, and density parameters surrounding builders' remedy projects, which for those unfamiliar is a longstanding statute enshrined within the Housing Accountability Act from, I believe, 1982, that allows developers to stand up housing projects in communities that do not have a compliant housing element without local approval. Other bills included AB 2243, which expands the jurisdictional applicability of a previously enacted bill, which streamlines the development of housing in both retail and commercial zones. And then finally, a last-minute proposal emerged under AB 98, which establishes new design standards for logistic use facilities for industrial purposes, including setbacks from sensitive areas like schools and homes in an effort to mitigate some of the air quality impacts that we've seen, mostly concentrated within the regions of San Bernardino and Riverside counties, but we do see that this has spillover effects in other communities throughout the state. This bill also requires local governments to update their circulation elements to account for trucking routes by 2026, which is pretty quick turnaround. Given that this measure was such a last-minute gut and amend bill with so little input from local communities and faced a lot of local backlash, we did work out a deal to pursue cleanup legislation next year, so we plan on engaging on that next year to make sure that hopefully you guys have more time to implement this, given all of these other element updates that are coming. And then finally, another snapshot that we just wanted to share was e-bike regulations. During last year's strategic planning retreat, we did talk about e-bike public safety. So while these comprise more incremental changes, we're looking at pursuing additional legislation next year. But just as a highlight, AB 1774 by Assemblymember Dixon prohibits the installation of speed modifiers, thus enhancing the enforcement and penalties associated with having those on e-bikes to make them transcend their speed capabilities beyond what is enshrined within law. And then another related bill included Senate Bill 1271 by Senator Min. This regulates e-bike manufacturers to prohibit the installation and use of combustible batteries, because we've seen e-bikes explode sometimes. So there's still much more to be done in this space. Next year, we're actually pursuing a proposal to regulate e-bike labeling requirements. There are classes 1, 2, and 3. We're hoping to require manufacturers of e-bike to have very clearly defined bright colored stickers to allow law enforcement to very easily pick out, hey, that might be a 14-year-old riding a class 3 e-bike, and therefore they can enhance their enforcement. So if there is interest from council, we're still in talks with various members, but it could be a great sponsorship opportunity looking into the next session. And then just a brief overview of this year's budget. This budget included a sizable deficit, which was ultimately balanced by various spending cuts, delays, shifts. Core local funding pots were maintained, including those for housing, homelessness, and transportation, which was great given the size of the deficit. Preliminary estimates for next year's budget are looking somewhat hopeful. I think that we saw there was, $4 billion of returns or over what we were anticipating. All of that money is technically accounted for and has to be spent on education. However, it does paint a slightly brighter outlook than what we were anticipating. So while we may see a deficit, we're hoping for additional budget opportunities, and that could include member requests from our members. Earmarking is another way to say it. But yeah, we definitely want to continue to work with staff on those opportunities next year. And then looking forward, we just want to flag some issues that we are anticipating for next year. We are going to have essentially a new legislature, or 1/4 of a new legislature. There will be 12 new senators, approximately 23 new assembly members, and a lot of that is just due to term limits. The first major class was a couple of years ago that termed out, which brought another 25% turnover. So that will bring new leadership, new opportunities, new policy designs, new political factions within our super duper Democratic majority. So that will definitely be interesting. As I said on the budget, we are expecting a potential deficit. However, we're hoping that it's not as bad. Fire insurance affordability was an issue that we worked on really diligently with the city this year. While a lot of our proposals were not enshrined within a bill, they did move through the regulatory process. So the regulatory process included that catastrophic modeling tool, which allows, which is really aimed at keeping insurers within the state. However, next year, we're really looking at addressing the availability, but also the affordability. And we know that many residents and homeowners within Santa Barbara will struggle with fire insurance affordability come soon. So that will definitely be a legislative focus that we'll engage on next year. Community reinvestment is a kind of clever term that the legislature is using as a, we're not saying redevelopment, but we are saying redevelopment essentially. But really what that means is just exploring some of the financing and revenue generation tools at the local level, looking at enhanced infrastructure financing districts, tax increment financing, what's working, what's not, and how it can be improved. There will be a select committee on community reinvestment chaired by Assemblymember Pappen, who's out of the Bay Area. We believe that she will convene that committee in January, and it'll be purely informational. But it should offer some insight into some of the legislative proposals that we may see next year, and some of the comments that will likely be received by local governments. And then we have sales tax reform. This really has to deal with the Bradley Burns sales tax model, where point of sale versus point of destination, which local government gets to capture those revenues. If you have a warehouse or distribution center likely contained within some of the trace corridors throughout the state, you're likely receiving a disproportionate share of sales tax revenue versus people that are maybe harbor communities that are buying a lot of those products. We understand that the League of California Cities and other local stakeholders are pursuing a constitutional fix to split that formula on a 50-50 basis. So that could bring additional revenues to the city, and it could just kind of split up how that structure is currently functioning. And then finally, we have cap and trade investments. The cap and trade program is the way by which we capture revenues pursuant to the carbon tax credits that we trade for major polluters. It generates approximately $4 billion of programmed funds, which fund things from like high-speed rail, housing investments, clean energy, kind of everything under that GHG reduction umbrella. It is set to expire in 2030. However, in order for a lot of these agencies to plan forward, they will need to, what's the word I'm looking? Extend the program next year. So that could mean that they open up the funding pot, see what's working, what's not, and create new programs, new funding programs that local governments could be eligible for. A lot of that could be complementary to the climate bond that was just passed off of the November ballot. And then I'll just add one thing. We're hearing rumors about another housing bond push next year. We've heard comments about your guys' local housing trust fund, so we'll definitely want to stay active on that in case there are opportunities to reinvigorate that fund at a state level. And then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Eric.
Thank you, Carly, and good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. Really quickly on the funding update through Representative Carver-Hall's office, as Barbara was saying, I wanted to give you a quick status update logistically about where that is in the process. There's probably a ton of questions you have right now about that, given November 5th election. But right now, we were able to successfully work with the representative to have that project be one of his 15 projects he's able to put forward. That was passed by the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and then passed by the full House permanently. However, the Senate side still has to do their process, and then the two have to reconcile. So it is included in the House passed version right now. You are included with everyone else across the country who got an earmark out of this current appropriations bill we're part of, but it's not final. It still needs to be passed under the, it's under the federal budget. So all of the earmarks are being lumped together right now. In the last 5 years since earmarks have come back, we have never seen individual earmarks be stripped out. It's always all or one, or all or nothing, excuse me. In the last 5 years, or 4 years, I should say, they've all happened. And right now, our government is funded through November 20th out in DC. Our federal fiscal year ended at the end of September. We have never, it's been decades since we passed a budget on time in DC. So this is very much par for the course to be under a continuing resolution. However, I will say the election makes things very uncertain in terms of when that gets extended or when a budget gets adopted. So it is possible that we see that November 20th date get pushed again, maybe out until January, maybe out until March, when the new House and new Senate members are seated. It's possible that Republicans who may have picked up some seats would like to see that happen in order to then flex their new powers over the budget. But I will end with saying that earmarks are very bipartisan right now in DC. There's no indication necessarily these are going away. But I just wanted to reiterate that we are right where we need to be, positioned as well as we can be as the politics in DC play out. And then when it comes to council priorities, like Carly said, we talked about these at the strategic planning session. I won't go over them individually, but these are kind of the policy principles we're working off of in addition to your comprehensive legislative platform that you have going into next year. So I welcome any questions or comments when we get there about what to add, what to change, what to amend on this slide. But this is just what we came out of that strategic planning session with. And then finally, I won't belabor this. You've seen this slide before, but this is kind of our general advocacy program working primarily through the city administrator's office. We are big and pride ourselves on communication. We are constantly in contact with your staff and working through a variety of issues and all the policy issues that Carly just told you about, as well as do pride ourselves in our advocacy trips up to Sacramento. I know Councilmember Friedman and staff came up to Sacramento. We had a very productive several days, meeting with your legislators, meeting with departments, meeting with influential folks about those priorities on the previous slide. So we look forward to continuing that relationship as well as building out those relationships with your legislative delegation. So with that, Carly and I are happy to answer any questions you have about anything on the presentation or anything going on in Sacramento.
All right, very good. Back to council for questions. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. And thank you for presentation. And it's been great to get the ongoing email updates of which advocacy letters have gone out and not. And I'm just wondering, does all of council get those letters, or is it just the Ledge Committee who's receiving those updates?
Councilmember Sneddon, so depending on the issue and where the support kind of directive came from, but we do not move forward support letters unless they're aligned with our legislative platform, so we find that alignment. If there isn't, then that support letter would come to full council for consideration and vote.
Okay.
That's our action. Mm-hmm.
That's great. And I'm wondering just, this is such a helpful presentation, but it's sort of, the beginning part of it is backward facing about what's already signed into law. And I'm interested if we could have a summary of sort of which ones of these did we advocate for or against. So, if something is signed into law, is that something, I'm particularly interested in AB 1893, for instance. Did we write a letter in opposition? Can we still be in opposition? That kind of thing, sort of going through these.
Yeah,
I'll
just
public
make
might not know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. A quick comment in that not everything on here we took a position on or supported or opposed. I believe that's correct. Carly will correct me if I'm wrong. But we can absolutely look back through staff to get you exactly of the bills we mentioned on this presentation, which ones you took a position and when. But as far as I know, not all of them we took positions on.
Yeah, most of them we did. So for example, AB 98 was something that cropped up within the last 72 hours of the legislative session, and we view it as having an impact to the city, given that there will be continuing legislation next year to amend it. So that's just one thing that we want to flag. AB 1893, we did not have a formal position on per se, but we did engage with suggestions and back and forth with the author's office on that measure.
And what were our suggestions?
The suggestions were technical in nature, and it had to do really with some of the density and site location requirements by which the builder's remedy could exist. I don't have them ready with me right now, but I'm happy to loop back in.
I guess that brings up sort of, I think, for the public to know, because, you know, I had a question from the public, like, you know, in the council agenda report, it, you know, refers to there's going to be a presentation. In the presentation, it's not clear, and they said, well, did you oppose that? Were you for it? And I thought, you know what, the public should be able to see that, maybe in this agenda item when it comes up, that we just sort of have a list of which ones we wrote letters for, because that AB 1893, I would have said we should vehemently oppose strongly. So it's a little surprising we didn't have a position on that, I suppose. And that brings me to my next question. I mean, I guess we'll get an update back, because I realize you don't have it here, which ones we formally opposed or supported. But are we still planning to meet as a legislative committee? Maybe that's where we could spend that deeper dive into maybe the update on which ones specifically we got the letters out for or not. I just want to acknowledge internally with emails, it's been fantastic getting this constant update, and it's very clear there's constant communication. Really appreciate it. I'm just looking for the closing the loop for the public-facing piece.
The next time we put together a presentation, we will definitely put that on the slide.
Yeah, Councilmember Snyder, we can definitely do it. I'm tracking those per legislative session, so we have all of the letters and the legislation that we supported, so I can easily reference that. And the second thing is, a lot of this work is at the staff level. So we work with Townsend. They send us specific language that they feel is either concerning or supportive. We provide technical assistance and feedback from all levels of staff, especially if we feel like something is getting traction with or without our support or opposition. What can we do to try to, again, do some language changes to make it either a little bit more accommodating for staff to implement, or again, across the board for other cities to also be able to work with.
And again, I think this has been very effective, but sometimes we as council members may interact with one of our legislators and maybe not even be fully aware that we've either supported or not supported in one way. So I guess the question is, do we have plans for a legislative committee to meet ever?
Our direction was that as part of the strategic planning process, we would go back to and reflect on our legislative platform and priorities as part of that, but we can absolutely meet prior to that to just talk about the outcomes from the last legislative session in more detail.
That would be great, I think, for the public, and just to maybe for that committee to weigh in on whether or not it wants to keep meeting or not. Okay. I guess those are my main questions. That'll be answered later, and just big thank you to Representative Carbajal for the East Side Library funding, and with hopes that that's honored.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great to see you all again, and concur with Councilmember Sten. This is definitely worth the partnership we have with you, and just very effective, feel much more informed, and also that we have a voice up there. We didn't really have a voice in Sacramento on key legislation. Just a couple questions. You mentioned on 2071 on the e-bikes. I noticed in there, and I looked it up while we were talking, it's that changed the definition of an e-bike. And just something to a question is that big, a large enough of a change that it could help us with enforcement when we get a local ordinance adopted? It was unclear to me when reading it on the fly right here, but that's something that I think would be helpful just to understand what that means for local governments, that change in there.
I think without having the law up in front of me with the text, the conversation around 1271 was, and that's what you're referring to, right? Yeah. That was mostly revolved around manufacturers who are selling these e-bikes that are potentially sourced through, let's just say, a country maybe that has less standards than we do when it comes to the quality of the batteries. That bill was mainly focused on making sure that if you are going to sell an e-bike at the manufacturer, at the retail level, that the bike batteries were sourced through a laboratory that accredited that battery for being appropriate for that device. What we've seen is, you can go on your phone right now and buy an e-bike in 2 seconds. And it ships from overseas, and we don't really have hands or eyes on in terms of how that's being manufactured. And like Carly was saying, they do have a tendency to spontaneously combust. I don't use that word lightly, but that's basically what's happening in some cases in garages and in parking lots and whatever it is. So that was the nature of the bill, is that they wanted to make sure that the retailers and in conjunction manufacturers were ensuring that the batteries are tested.
Great, I think that's actually very important. We think about speed here and what's going on, but fire safety is paramount with these, especially the batteries. So
I've actually heard police departments who refuse to confiscate them because they don't know where to put them in their facility because they can combust. So then they don't want to put them in their police department. They don't want to put them outside. So they don't know what to do. So I agree.
yeah, definitely, and definitely want to support the next session legislation that really helps clarify for local governments what we can, what we can't do. Relating to minors, I know when we were had the legislative advocacy earlier this year, that was one of the bills, but it didn't obviously get through, having to do with how you treat 12 and under, then teenagers, and issues with getting them the information they need, and with the DMV and things like that, or something similar to that, like a permit. The other question is, with the Central Coast Caucus, with our legislators, they must have certain priorities too. So how what are we doing, or how can we be supportive of, it's a two-way street. We have our issues, but they also have theirs, and how are we working with them to understand what their priorities are and things here?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Councilmember. So now that the election craziness is over and staff members are returning back to the Capitol and back to the district, Eric and I have plans to sit down with Senator Limon, her staff, Assemblymember Hart and his staff, and discuss priorities and where we can find some mutual ground prior to the start of the next session. So more to come on that. But it's typical practice for us to wait until the election is over to kick off those conversations so as not to overburden them. But yes, I know that, we know that Senator Limon has really been an incredible champion in the environmental sustainability space. I would imagine that she will continue to do so. I think the same goes for Assemblymember Hart. So I think that there could be some good synergies in terms of bills and sponsorships there as next session.
Great, thank you. And then my last question was, it's just relating to, actually I think you might have answered it, so I'm good, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Any further questions? I don't have any speakers present. Are there any speakers online to this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, one raised hand, Linda Honickman.
Very good.
Linda Honickman, please go ahead.
Thank you, and I will be speaking as an individual. Also, I'm not very good at thinking on my feet. I haven't seen any of this report ahead of time, but I do want to make a couple of comments that follow up on what has been said about AB 1893, for example. There have been several state laws. I'm very much pro-housing, and I think we needed to have a lot of the state laws that we've had. However, Santa Barbara is unique, and there have been some things that were counterproductive. For example, SB 9, I think, is an example of how some state laws just make the land value go up in a place where we already have very little vacancy, and it doesn't help In the case of 1893, I know you didn't take a position perhaps, but that's an example where the builder's remedy is bad enough in that you don't have a lot of local control. But at least we got a number of projects over the last year that gave us that 20% minimum for low-income units. And the proposal for 1893 now can be reduced to only 7% affordable units. So I do think we have a lot in common with other areas that are in the Central Coast Caucus, so I would encourage you. I think we need to look at other similar communities that aren't as large as the big cities, because there are some things that we can work together on. Thanks much.
Thank you. Any further public comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, very good. Oh, Ms. Sneddon has a...
Is it comments?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
There's no action on this. so
Yeah, no
we're
action,
yeah.
just comments. Thank you so much. So just reiterating, I think, yes, it's a good idea to look at sponsoring e-bike bills and partnering with that. Also, you mentioned looking at our earmarking requests and partnering with that, I think is a great idea. Let's pursue the fire insurance affordability. I'm glad that you said that community reinvestment is something akin to redevelopment, which I think we definitely want to support strongly. Again, thank you to Salud Carbajal. And I guess on this slide 10, our priorities, I'm just wondering how to word it differently, or maybe under that housing and land use. I think one of the big issues for us is local control. So I guess I'm kind of surprised that we didn't actively oppose AB 1893. We're having so many issues with builder's remedy, and this is sort of retroactively imposing it. And I would have thought this would be something we would really strongly out in front want to oppose in terms of local control. So I guess how do we need to word these priorities so that that's clear, that that's something, I mean, it seems to be in alignment with our legislative platform strongly. So something like that. I'm not sure how to get that across, but on housing and land use, I think we want to maybe add the added emphasis that when our local control is in jeopardy, that's something that we really, I'm just looking at my colleagues, I think that that's something we would want to really strongly advocate for or against to keep our local control. Other than that, I think the priorities are still in line. That would just be a added clarification on the housing and land use.
Yeah, and I can just add one additional comment. We did oppose 2 additional measures this session that dealt with the builder's remedy that had more, let's say, stringent timing and compliance impacts associated with HCD's authority versus the court's authority and the timing constraints associated with that. AB 1893's goals are really to set density and location limits associated with these projects so that a developer's not coming in and saying, I want to build a 500-foot story, smack dab in the middle of downtown. So while it does align with a lot of those builder's remedy proposals, we were actively engaging and opposed a number of other builder's remedy bills that would have expanded the authority.
Thank you. And I know we're also are just reiterating operating under the principle that we want to have more support for things than we're saying no to things. We don't want to just be the no city. We want to be looking for things we can support and partner with, and to keep that going so that when we do say we oppose something, that it really stands out as different. So thank you for that.
All right, very good. If there are no further comments, we'd like to thank the folks from Townsend. Well done. And Ms. Anderson, appreciate that. We'll go to the next item. You have an item to read, please, Madam Clerk.
Yes, item 17, contract for the construction of the Santa Barbara Police Station Resolution Agreement. Recommendation that Council B adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara authorizing the finance director and risk manager to acquire and execute policies of insurance and other agreements necessary to implement an owner-controlled insurance program for the new police station construction project.
All right, very good. And before we get going, I have a quick disclosure and non-disclosure to make. But turns out that I didn't know Pro West Constructors were going to be the proposed bid. And but because they do a lot of work in town, an old college teammate of mine happens to be an executive with Pro West Construction, but we haven't talked about this. And these stories he tells from more than 40 years ago are absolute fabrication, so we'll just leave it at that. And with that, Mr. Hess, we will should begin with your, or who's going to start off here?
Mayor Rouse, council members.
Chief.
You get to hear from me first. How's that? So I have the honor and privilege, quite frankly, to open this item today. I know that although I've only been here a little over 2 years, that this has been a long-standing priority of this community. And I will tell you, for me, as the current chief of police, it is my priority to get this project built and over the finish line and to get our folks in this building. So very, very great day that we can hopefully award a contract today. And just a couple things with that. For those that don't know, our current station was built in 1959, making it older than some of us in this room. Over 60 years old. It's never been upgraded to meet our seismic safety standards or accessibility. It's designed for a much smaller community and a much smaller police department, to the point where we actually use several sites in order to actually do and provide police services here in the city. It's not just all in that main police station at this point. It's too small, it's inefficient, and certainly does not meet our needs. A little later in the presentation, you'll go over all of the things that were made priorities in 2017 with Measure C, but this being one of them. And really, I'm excited that this is more than anything going to provide the community with better access to police services and will lead to better recruitment and retention for the police department. There's going to be a lot of station improvements for employees. The new facility will be 3 stories, 65,000 square feet. It'll have a parking structure, a 911 public safety dispatch center, community room. I'm going to say that again, community room, which we do not have currently. Training room, property and evidence room, a forensic laboratory, indoor shooting range, fitness area, large solar and battery array, which is also one of the council and community priorities. So a lot of things, and those are just the highlights besides the, normal things of locker rooms and detective areas and office space. But really, it's a very exciting moment for us to be able to break ground and actually see this moving forward and get moved, hopefully, into the building and start calling that our new home in the spring of '27. So with that, today we're going to talk about a few things. Like I said, the Measure C funding priorities, the process, so where we were and where we are right now, the police station building entry rendering, which will be very exciting, best value process for the contractor selection, the Pro West Constructors, schedule and cost, owner-controlled insurance program. Don't worry, I'm not going to try to discuss that, and staff recommendations. So with that, I'm going to turn that over.
Thank you very much, Chief Gordon. I'm Brad Hess, the Principal Project Manager for Special Projects for the City, and this is indeed a good day. I thought I would start off, as Chief Gordon alluded to, just to remind everyone what the Measure C funding priorities were and are, and just to make sure that everyone understands that with an investment that's this big in this community, it's just important to note that we are absolutely nailing this one. So we are meeting the expectations and the priorities of the voters. So to summarize the past 7 years, believe it or not, and I'll try and do it quickly, after Measure C passed in November of 2017, the design team was selected and we went through a very thorough programming exercise where with the police department to determine what was needed for the new station, and then how much space we needed to accommodate it. With the site criteria that we had, we then embarked on a very extensive site selection process where we looked at 20 different sites, we evaluated 6 of them, and then we thoroughly studied 2 of them, which culminated in the Coda parking lot being selected as the preferred site. Most of you remember that. The schematic design at that point then progressed, and we ended up with a mitigated negative declaration environmental document that was adopted in July of '22. This was followed by design development drawings, working alongside the police department to design the inside of the building to make sure that it was efficient and flexible so that we could adapt long-term to how policing changes in this town. There have been many challenges throughout this process and some difficult design requirements along the way, such as being the first net zero energy building for the city, as well as being the largest construction project that will be subject to the community workforce agreement. So this site and this design have undergone many studies, many reports, many reviews, and with constant refinement through the construction documents, we finally have our approvals to get us to this point of actually building it. And it is very exciting, to say the least. So this is the rendering of the police station looking at it from across Santa Barbara Street. And while you guys are enjoying that view, I thought I'd take this opportunity to just thank the City Council and thank the police department, the entire police department, including its entire leadership, and really the Santa Barbara community, because it's been supported consistently for the last 7 years. And we're really looking forward to delivering an amazing project for Santa Barbara and for the police department. So moving on, from past to present. So now I'd like to walk you through the process that the city went through in recommending the general contractor. It began with having an industry day for all potential contractors in late 2023 to get those in the industry excited about the project and interested in bidding on it. So we invited them to Santa Barbara. It was a great day. We had a wonderful turnout. We had 10 highly qualified contractors show up and participated in the event. And at that time, you may recall, this project would have been subject to the lowest responsible bidder because we weren't sure if Measure A was going to be passing at that point. So part of this was we wanted to pre-qualify the general contractors so that if we did end up doing a low bid, then we would at least be assured that those contractors could actually bid it, or build it. So we went through a pre-qualification process. 6 contractors went through that process. And we got to, I'm sorry, I lost my spot. So we had 6 contractors that were pre-qualified just prior to Measure A passing. And as I'm sure everyone knows, Measure A enables the city to use different procurement methods other than the low bid contract for developing construction projects. And one of those is best value. So being able to evaluate the contractor's proposals using multiple selection criteria and not just price results in a better product for the city. So we put together a best value RFP, or request for proposal package, and that was sent to the pre-qualified contractors that included the plans, multiple site reports, and the conditions of approval. And as a huge high note, it was during that time that the farmers market, Saturday market, got relocated to Carrillo Street, and by all reports has been a huge success, which we were very happy about. So we received proposals from all the general contractors on October 3rd for evaluation and consideration. So in the next few slides, I'd like to explain the best value process. These are the 6 general contractors that were pre-qualified and who received the request for proposal bid package. And as it happens with many projects in Santa Barbara, not all 6 contractors that were pre-qualified submitted proposals. We received 2 excellent proposals, one from Pro West Constructors and one from Swinnerton. The proposals were reviewed independently by the panelists, They were scored based on the selection criteria that we have at the bottom of the screen. And that is experience, schedule, management competency, labor compliance, safety record, and then we held interviews for both of the contractors. So each proposal was scored with a possible 1,000 qualification points using the selection criteria, and then an average score was given from the panelists' scores. The proposed cost from the contractors was divided by the average score, and this produced the best value score. The lowest score is determined to be the best value overall for the city. And based on the comparison of the two contractors and their scores, ProWest Constructors is the recommended contractor that will provide the best value to the city for this project. Hopefully the equation made sense, but what this does is it eliminates overweighting an opinion as opposed to really sterilizing the process to make it clean. So a little bit about ProWest. ProWest is ProWest Constructors is an outstanding California contractor. They only operate in California. Very strong local presence, having worked for Cottage Hospital and UCSB for a number of years. They're very strong technically. They've completed multiple very complicated projects with intensive state oversight, both locally and throughout California. They're also the contractor selected by the county to build the probation building up the street. And they strive to construct projects that really benefit communities. So we feel very fortunate and excited to recommend a partnership with ProWest Constructors. So while the final schedule is being worked on with ProWest, the current projected schedule has them starting in January and completing construction in April of '27. But once the contractor is complete, that's when the primary move happens for the police department as they move into the building, which is substantial. Because really what's being moved are very sensitive materials and files and a chain of custody for all of the evidence. So I'd like to turn it over to Mark Howard so that he can talk about insurance.
Mr. Howard?
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Mark Howard, your risk manager. I'm here to talk about this owner-controlled insurance program. This proposal before you today incorporates this unique concept of an owner-controlled insurance program, or an OCIP, the acronym. Under an OCIP, the owner purchases insurance for the entire construction project. It eliminates the need for each of the general contractor and all of the subcontractors to purchase insurance on the project. This creates a cost savings potential because every time one of those folks adds insurance to the project, there is the associated markup for overhead profit. That's not the primary reason for doing this. The use of a single administrator for claims that may occur is the main reason we're doing this. So the city obtained this OCIP through a JPA partner called PRISM. PRISM is a statewide JPA that provides insurance and financial solutions and tools for California public entities. The OCIP is one of the many financial tools offered by PRISM. It's managed by Alliant Insurance Services. They will do the heavy lifting for this. They will enroll all of the contractors, subcontractors into this program, and then administer all the claims. And for those interested, this is not the first time an OCIP's been used in Santa Barbara County. Santa Barbara County has used it for their North County Jail project, and they're also using it on their probation project. Next slide, please. Oh, wait, before I leave that slide, what the city's OCIP does is it purchases all these types of insurance plus more. So it covers the workers' compensation, the employer's liability, general and auto liability, excess insurance, builder's risk. So if something were to happen to the building during the construction project, there's insurance to cover that to get us back to where we were before the event happened. Next slide, please. So this slide goes over what I consider the primary benefit of an OCIP, and that is it eliminates finger pointing. In the event something goes wrong, and we all know the reason we buy insurance, the reason the city requires insurance on construction projects is not for when things go correctly, it's for when things don't go according to plan. And under a project of this size and magnitude, the number of contractors and subcontractors on site are many. And the first thing that any one of those insurance carriers would do is start the underwriting process and pointing fingers at someone else. As this model shows you in a nice little graphic here, everybody's on the same team. They're all part of the same insurance policy, all using the same claims administration. So there's consistency throughout the entire process, and that's the main benefit to the city in this project, is to make it run smoothly.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. And it is with great excitement and that staff recommends that council award the contract with Pro West Constructors for the police station project. Thank you, and we're available for questions.
Very good. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff? Ms. Gutierrez.
It's just a clarifying question. This contractor, does this project in need of having union workers? Is it tied to the PLA?
Yes, it is.
And so this specific contractor also
Yes.
has union work? Perfect. Thank you.
I had a question for Mr. Howard, just on things like workers' compensation. So basically, they take that part of the bid out of their bid because we're going to cover it. How do you develop like an experience modification? How do they rate that? Is there some kind of a standard practice for that? Or, because I mean, the contractor has to have his own X mod for his employees. How does it work in this world?
Great question, Mr. Mayor. So in this particular world, this concept is done on a more of a global phase. So all the contractors are enrolled, and it creates a new X mod for the OSIP itself, not for the individuals.
Well, I mean, I like the idea. It just is kind of different.
It's very different. One of the added benefits to this is that the OSIP creates its own loss control program specific to the location, and they will be holding safety-related loss control events at the location for all contractors, subcontractors, and the like.
So each different employee classification has its own rate, and that's all done in that global.
Correct.
Whatever that thing is.
Correct.
That's kind of amazing. And then in terms of like all the liability, the public liability, excess liability, umbrella, everything is all part of this. Is it a package per se?
It is a package.
And, okay, and that's just so the financing is counterbalanced, it's out of the project costs, and so at some point in time, because there's no markup from subcontractors, the whole thing, they're all covered the same.
All covered in the same fashion, and one of the things that I may have glossed over, in a large construction contract like this, my office would be recommending that all the vendors here have very high insurance coverage limits. This is going to provide higher coverage limits than most of those folks would be able to get on their own.
All right, very good. And does this is kind of a tweaky question, but does this affect the contractor's bonding for the project?
It does not.
Okay. All right, very good. Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. This is fascinating on the insurance. It's one of the major components of it we all have to consider. This is more towards the cost itself, and maybe Mr. DiMartini, this might be more for you. We're awarding the contract for $95 million. But can we speak, since we are bonding for that, can you speak to the news that we just received in terms of our bond rating and how that's supportive of this effort of of our financial status and what it means for the project?
Director Martini?
Yes, Councilmember Freeman, I'd be happy to do so. As part of issuing debt, we're issuing a lease revenue bond for financing of this project along with Dwight Murphy Field as well. As part of the financing process, we have to get an independent credit rating. And so we did so with S&P and with Moody's. And we've had credit ratings in the past when we issued debt for our water and our wastewater system as well as the airport. I'm happy to report that through that process, S&P affirmed the rating that we had previously, and Moody's upgraded our rating from a AA2 to a AA1. So the city has excellent credit rating, as proven by the recent rating agencies' reports for this particular debt issuance. And what that does is it allows us to, number one, be in the best position possible to go ahead and issue debt. For agencies that may have a lower credit rating, they may not even be able to issue debt at all. And then the second thing that it allows us to do, again, is be in the best position possible to get the most favorable interest rate on that issuance.
Thank you. That's great news as well, because for such a large project, reducing the interest rate has the potential to save us a lot of money over time. So I appreciate the update.
Ms. Sneddon?
Thank you, Mayor Rosa. So along those same lines, I was wondering, I know we had approved the debt issuance, and so how much of this amount is paid over what kind of increment of time? And with that question also, how much does the OSIP cost? Like, what is the cost of that as a bundle?
Yes, Councilmember Sneddon. And so the plan is to issue debt for a 30-year term. And so we will be paying back the debt issuance on an annual basis. Over the next 30 years, it will be a fixed amount every year. We'll pay it in 2 installments. The assumption when we put together the financing package was that it would be approximately $8 million annually of our Measure C revenues, which represents approximately 25% of our annual Measure C revenue source. As far as the cost of the OSIP, I'll ask Mr. Howard to confirm it's just over $3 million.
And is that part of the bond issuance? That's part of the debt that we're taking out?
Yes, Councilmember Sneddon, that is included in that.
Okay. And so then just one follow-up. You said, so we'll be paying it off over a 30-year term, and that's paying it back off to where we borrowed from. What is our schedule for payment to the contractor? Is there some amount up front and then upon completion, or what's that schedule?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sneddon, we actually just received a drawdown schedule from them where they're estimating the projected costs over the course of the 24 to 27 months, in this case 27 months. So that will, Keith and I will be talking quite a bit in terms of how that functions.
Okay, but it's over time.
It is.
It's not up front and it's not all at the end. It's that part is paced out.
That is
over
correct.
time. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, very good. Well, I'm personally pleased because of the local track record they had. We've, was, obviously a little nervous about the community workforce part of this whole plan, but the idea that we have this best value system now, and now we have projects that are near and dear to us that they've completed and other ones that are going to be completed. So there's some familiarity with them, and they also would have familiarity with our local trades as well, which I would think they would be tapping when they come into town and do this work. So I'm very pleased with the work of our Public Works Department pulling this together. I think that was, this is a job well done. If there's no other comments, we could move on to the recommendations. Oh, Ms. Gutierrez.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. I wanted to make the motion to move staff recommendation.
Okay, first by Mrs. Gutierrez, second by Mr. Friedman. Any other comments to the motion? Everybody understands the motion? You may speak away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we do this, I just wanted to say a few comments. First, this is a long time coming for our community, and I remember back in it was September 17th, I think was the meeting. It was referenced in here in 2019. We had a room full of people, and there was a lot of uncertainty with the farmers market and what the future of the farmers market was going to be, the police station. and we moved it forward, and today is a big day for our community. We're moving the police station, and it's going to serve us all well for decades and decades to come in terms of public safety, recruitment and retention of our police officers, and also giving them the type of facility they deserve. It's just the current facility does not serve them well, and so they don't serve us to the capability that they want to. And it turns out, with the trepidation of the farmers market, which was also a community institution at that same site, that the first few weeks there, it has been a revitalization part of downtown. There's a lot of people down there, and they are doing extremely well. And my wife and I have been going down there, and we talked to some of the farmers, and in particular those on Carrillo are saying that they have an increase in business, and there's so many people down there. So it was a long time coming, and I just want to thank everybody involved. And this is for the community, but it's also for our public safety personnel. You deserve to have this facility. So I'm glad to support this, and it's just another instance of we are really turning around what downtown is, and we're moving forward with downtown, and this will be a big part of it as well. So thank you.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I just, going back in time on this timeline, and Councilmember Friedman and I were both on the same ballot as Measure C, and the promises made there that we get to, as a collective, get to bring forward. And then Mayor Rouse was on council, and then little hiatus, and back as mayor, and it's still been moving forward in all that time. And having been on the site selection committee, and I really want to congratulate Mr. Hess. That was a very, very difficult time, and looking at the different possible sites. We've had a lot of staffing changes since then, and you've been the through line in seeing this through, and very difficult conversations. And yes, remembering the standing room only on multiple meetings with the farmers market. And it was very important to us that the farmers market be happy in their relocation, and that took a lot of multiple meetings, community meetings, meetings with the farmers market board representatives, and while always prioritizing our public safety, but that latitude of being able to really celebrate and make sure that that went well. And even this item not coming until sort of after we've had a couple weeks of the farmers market going well, and knowing that that would be successful. So I just really want to congratulate that process, and then also with the project labor agreement, and then seeing some projects, how those might need to be adjusted. And thank you, Director Maurer, for bringing forward the best value concept, and allowing that to come forward. So everything is just primed just right. And in this design, also that there's community room, and that you emphasize that, Chief, so important. That's something we've been asking for all of these 7 years, and it wasn't really clear where that was going to be or how that was going to all fit in. And so happy to hear that that's a priority. And I had not realized, I knew it was seismically unsound, but I didn't realize that it had no updates since it was built. So we can't get this built fast enough that we can have safety for the community. And then just as a reminder, as a comment, that where the current police station is now will be an opportunity, city-owned property that, I won't pretend to say what we might prioritize that as, but that's going to be an asset that city owns, and we'll be able to have full discussions of that. So while this funding is going towards really doing the right thing with what we should for public safety, we'll also be freeing up an asset to be looking at. And for public safety too, that our dispatch has been in different locations, that all of these different entities. And so really this right here is the dream team in bringing this all together. And really, Mr. Hess, congratulations.
Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I'm really excited about this. It's been a long time, and it's during the time there's been a lot going on in our nation, and a lot of pushback from the community, but also a lot of support. And being a council member during these times where law enforcement was being looked under a microscope. I really want to thank my colleagues for really sticking together and continue to support this project that is very much needed. I had mentioned it before. I was a police explorer, and I remember the times where we had dispatch within the department, and it is a very, very old building. I walked in there a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still like, oh my God, like it hasn't changed. And I know that for a lot of the police officers, especially the ones that are thinking about, you know, joining the force in Santa Barbara, being able to work in a new building with all of these amazing facilities and having that community conference room is really going to help, especially now that you guys have the Citizen Academy going on. So I'm just really excited and very honored to sit on council while we're going to pass the staff recommendation.
Well, as long as you brought up the search committee, I was doing that well over 20 years ago. I won't go far back. But anyway, and we looked at 19 different sites. So we vetted a lot of places, and this was absolutely the best place. We've got a super inferior, not a proper workplace in the police annex, so we're going to get out of there. We've got our dispatch up in Lot 6, which is also inappropriate. So all of this is a great stuff over a long, long time of considering this. And yeah, when I went to visit our detectives in their room, there were 4 detectives in a room that didn't have room for furniture, so they had backpacks in each of the corners. I thought, okay, maybe it's time to build a new facility. So we're finally getting there. So with that, we have a motion on the floor in a second. And Madam Clerk, would you post the vote, please?
Yes, this is a motion by Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez, seconded by Councilmember Friedman for the recommended action. Please go ahead and vote. Actually, hold one. I will retake attendance. That will show, and then we'll do the vote. So hold one moment.
Maybe you guys can get fancy electronics like we have.
Again, this is not the vote. This is just attendance. So hold
All right,
this.
very good.
Wait.
Oh.
Don't leave. This is just attendance showing who's here and who isn't here, and then we'll have you vote. Okay. Exactly. Now you may vote.
The convenience of the electronic age. Thank you. The motion passes 5-2 with 2 absent. Very good. Congratulations, Chief and staff. Okie dokie. With that, we'll move on to council staff communications, council member engagements. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a lot went on because of the Halloween holiday, but the DA had a Dia de los Muertos altar that was very cool to check out. Chaucer's Bookstore celebrated their 50th anniversary. McDermott Crockett also had a Dia de los Muertos celebration. The Friendship Center had a wind down event. The 9th annual Fired Up Special Olympics happened at the Stagecoach Museum. That was really cool to see that. One of my residents, I forgot his last name, but his first name's Richard. He turned 100 years old, and it was really cool to see him there, still around, and a lot of veterans showed up to honor his service during the Korean War. He was a pilot for the Army back then, so that was really cool. Let's see here. The art museum had the El Presidio had a Dia de los Muertos event and market, which was really well attended, and it was great to see so many people out. The library had their, Plaza Palooza, their grand opening, and that was also amazing to see so many people there. I also attended the Kingdom Causes fundraiser to help address our human trafficking problem that we have in our county. Really want to thank them for what they're doing. Attended the Coffee with a Cop at the Eastside Library. Participated in the ribbon cutting for a new Indian restaurant on the 1200 block of State Street, which I believe is called Namaste Bistro. Soul Bites had a cool jazz event on Saturday, which was really, really fun to attend. I also attended the Kids Draw at the Architectural Foundation Gallery. It was cool to see so many kids' artworks up on the wall and people there to support them. Also attended the Veterans Day ceremony at the Santa Barbara Cemetery yesterday with a lot of my colleagues here, and participated in the Red Kettle kickoff fundraiser for the Salvation Army last night. And yeah, that's what I've been up to.
All right, very good. Before we move on, we had a miscommunication. I left out a public commenter online. Can you go ahead and tee up Mr. Israel, please?
Very good. Sullivan Israel, please go ahead. Sullivan Israel, you can go ahead. No, you're very, very low volume.
Sorry about that. Sorry, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't know if this is the right time to do this. Thanks for calling on me. I was going to give a public comment on the Housing Ad Hoc Committee findings. But I guess...
Yeah, Mr. Israel, we forwarded that discussion until December 3rd, so we've taken public comment already for today. So we will be, you'll have your opportunity on December the 3rd.
Thank you so much. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we'll go to Alejandra Gutierrez for her engagements.
I just wanted to share with the council that today I got invited to a student walkout at DP. A couple of students gathered and they invited me. They wanted to just vocalize their feelings on the election that we just had, and it was just such an honor, and it was put on by the Dos Pueblos Mecha Committee. So I just want to thank the students for being so courageous and rallying up their colleagues and speaking out. So that was really interesting, really fun to witness.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since it was 2 weeks, I have a few different items, but attended the Veterans Day ceremony at the Santa Barbara Cemetery that was hosted by the Pierre Claessens Veterans Foundation and the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and had a great turnout. Over probably around 250 people at least were there, and the mayor was there, and Councilman.
The flyover finally happened at 1 o'clock.
I was still there actually because it took forever to get out, so we actually had a show for just a few of us that were there. But it was a great way to honor all veterans who have served to make our council meetings possible when it comes down to it. Also attended the military ball this weekend, and it was reconstituted, and it was, I want to in particular thank Carmen Munoz, who works at the county and at the Veterans Building, and really, they put it together in about 6 weeks, her and a few group of veterans. It wasn't going to take place this year, and they wanted to reconstitute it and make it so that it had all the veterans from all the different age groups, including active service, and it was really well received, and it was an honor to be invited there. My wife Julie and I were able to go. And then also attended the Congressman Carbajal is sponsoring legislation to rename the Goleta Post Office after General Frederick Lopez of Goleta, and so that was the announcement that legislation is out there, and we were joined by a number of people, including of course, the General and his family. Congressman Carbajal, I want to thank him for that, and Goleta Councilmember James Kiriakou spoke on behalf of Goleta. attended the Sustainability Committee, and we have recommendations coming out of there in terms of some plastics issues that will be very valuable in terms of reducing the amount of plastics in our community, and that will be coming into ordinance eventually to council. And Sherry Goodman, with her book Threat Multiplier, came out and gave a talk at the Community Environmental Council, and we had the opportunity to meet her, and it was very enlightening on how climate change is impacting the U.S. military and what the steps they are taking. So it's another perspective on that, and really appreciated Cliff Maurer, our Public Works Director, who had the connection to have her come out here and have that opportunity to meet with her. Attended the Beacon Executive Committee meeting, the Library Plaza Palooza, the grand opening of the library, and it was a long time coming. But thanks to everybody who made it happen, and it is now an outstanding community center, and there was already a youth makers market this last weekend, and the mural on the poppy, it's a Santa Barbara location now, and I'll be honest, I don't ever remember seeing it before this, and people don't remember it either, and they say, when was that mural of the poppies, when did you guys put it in there? And the answer is 1930. And no one remembers seeing it before now. That's how hidden it was. So, but big thank you to the Library Foundation, our past library directors, including, I want to recognize our library director, Irene Macias, who was around, who was there to start who was part of the start of the foundation and the children's library, and really advocated for this back all the way. I found an email exchange between her and I back in 2011, where she was advocating, and I was on the library board at the time, for the council to appropriate the first $150,000 for design. So I wanted to and she couldn't be there, but I wanted to recognize her today. And then also, Special Olympics fired up. I want to recognize Gina Carbajal. This was, she's transitioning from Special Olympics, and that was her baby that she created, and the mayor was there and others, and it was a great event. And the Apple Academy at San Marcos High School, their day of caring, went to different places throughout, and it was great to see all the high school kids. Chaucer's 50th anniversary as well. Congratulations to the community treasure, Chaucer's, on their 50th anniversary, and it was a celebration of the owner's 80th birthday as well, Mari. So, thank you.
All right, very good. And on November 3rd, Sunday, I got to start the Santa Barbara Half Marathon, which was up to 7,000 people this year. It was a logistical nightmare that they somehow pulled off, but it was, you did it? All right, well, I went back to bed by the time the 5K started, but it was pretty spectacular. And then this coming Saturday, for all you guys not doing much, there's the Alzheimer's Walk. We have a mayor's team that actually Nicole Grisanti put together for me, but that's available, and that's going to be at, what time does that start? 10? It's like 10, yeah. So yeah, we're going to start off at the Chase Palm Park Center. So come on out and walk around. And with that, I believe we stand adjourned until next week at 4:41. Thank you.